Hey everyone, I'm very excited to be here. Flights cannot be taken as granted these days, so I'm feeling lucky just to be here. This talk is about challenges in time series forecasting, and I want to start by asking how challenging time series forecasting really is. We talked with a data analyst in a medium-sized food manufacturer to understand what are the efforts of the company in forecasting. This company forecasts the demand for each one of its products in order to plan the supply. Now, it has to be accurate because the products are consumable and often with very short shelf lives. How long do you think it will take? How long do you think it takes for this company to generate forecast and maintain the forecast for all of its products? Hint, it's in human years. Well, this requires 107 human years. And let me walk you through how I got to these numbers. It takes about a week to generate forecasts, initial forecasts for one product. This company has about 5,000 products, so it takes 96 human years to generate initial forecasts. Every month, the company has about 25 new products, so it takes another 6 human years to produce forecasts for them. And it doesn't end here, since the forecast must be updated continuously and adjusted to changes, campaigns, and so on. Overall, it requires 107 people to work only on this for a full year. Now, actually, this company has 10 data analysts which work only on demand forecast, and this is typical for this kind of companies. My name is Inbal Tedeschi. I'm a data scientist and team leader in Anodot, the autonomous business monitoring company. Together with my incredible team, we've built time series forecasting platform. Today, the agenda is to talk about why is it important to forecast, what to think about before forecasting, define well your requirements, set expectations. Most of the talk will be about some of the main challenges in time series forecasting. And in the end, I will touch a little bit about how a large-scale forecasting system is being built. I will try to convince you that forecasting is important, challenging, and that it's better to use machine learning in order to do it right. You will understand what it takes to build a forecasting model, a forecasting system, and how to be prepared for the forecasting effort. After all, this is what forecasting is all about. Every corporate in every industry needs forecasts for planning. Often, there are many measures to forecast, and it needed to be done continuously on a regular basis. Some of the main use cases are demand forecast for planning of supply. So, for example, a transportation company needs to know how many drivers to assign in each hour in the next 3 days in each one of the cities it operates in, and it needs to be updated every hour according to the actual weather. Now, if the forecast will be too low, there will not be enough drivers, and the customer will not get service. If the forecasts are too high, there will be too many drivers, and the expenses of the company will be unnecessarily high. Cost forecast. So, R&D manager needs to know by how much the cloud spending grow in order to take actions and reduce them, or to purchase the packages which are most suitable for his planned usage. And they need to do it for every account and every service separately. Growth, revenue forecast. Finance team need to know what will be the revenue in the next year to plan for supply and for a budget and strategy. And there are many more use cases. We've been talking with many customers about forecasts. They all need forecasts, they all want it. But before you put the efforts in building a forecasting system or buying one, there are several questions you must ask. First, how exactly you are going to use it. The process of consuming the forecast must be defined right from the beginning. Ask yourself, do I have a workflow to integrate the forecast in? Do I have actionable outcomes from the forecast? This is really important right from the beginning. Second, you need to define well the requirements and your needs from the system and make sure it fulfills all of them. So, for example, you need to know what is the horizon you need to forecast and on which time scale. I would need to forecast the cloud costs on a monthly basis in the next 3 months, and I need to update them daily, okay? What is the scale and granularity of your data? For example, I have hourly data of 1,000 measures of hourly data. Excuse me. Okay. You need to know that the system fills all of your requirements and that you get the desired time to value. Value, this is one of the main things you need to understand. You need to know how you're going to measure the value. Actually, this is the success criteria of your project. Okay. If I'm forecasting product sales, does it help me to reduce my inventory? And if I'm forecasting cloud costs, does it help me to reduce them? In Anodot, for example, we forecast cloud costs. And we had a case not long ago that we found that our cloud costs for EC2 are going to be increased, highly increased. And after investigation, we found that we had too many servers which were running unnecessarily. We stopped them. And once we stopped them, we can measure how much money we saved by doing this, okay? Now, if you can't measure the value, then you need to really think if you want to do it. In machine learning, we often use accuracy as a measure of success, but accuracy is not a good measure of value. So let's say I'm selling coats, and my supplier has a minimum of 1,000 coats that I must purchase anyway. Then it doesn't matter if I'm wrong below 1,000. But above 1,000, any underestimation or overestimation will lead to losses. Finally, you need to define your expectations. You cannot forecast anomalies or unexpected changes in behavior. Every data has its own level of uncertainty. So we often hear from clients that they will be happy when the error rate will be below 5%, for example. But if I have a random process which generates the numbers -1 and 1, then the best forecast I can give is 0. And the best error rate that I can achieve is 100%. So it really depends on your data. Also, the quality of the forecast depends on the history, on the historical data that you have. So you cannot expect to forecast well 1 year ahead if you only have a couple of months of data. So you must set realistic expectations. Okay, you've set the requirements, you set expectations. Now let me describe you some of the main challenges in achieving accurate forecasts. There are many factors that can influence your data and need to be considered when generating forecasts. These are the ones that I'm going to talk about today. Trends. Often your data has a trend. So a healthy business tends to increase its revenue every year. So you cannot forecast the current revenue as a revenue for next year. You must account for the trend. Many data sets has seasonality. The data can vary during the hours of the day, the days of the week, and so on. This data here is taken from FinOps. This is the volume of transactions of a specific currency. Now, there are no transactions during the weekend, so this data has a weekly seasonality. And seasonality can be daily, weekly, bi-weekly, and so on. special events can influence your data by much. You can see how this, the volume of this currency increases dramatically during the holiday season. Sales events, holidays, marketing campaigns, deployment of your software can all influence your data and must be considered. Occasionally, there are unexpected changes in behavior. We've all witnessed how COVID came into our lives and turned them over. It also dropped the currency of the volume of this currency. So there is no way we could predict it. But we must respond quickly and adapt as fast as we can to the new normal. On the other end, we don't want to adapt to any transit anomaly. We don't want our forecast to look like this, so we must be robust to transit anomalies. Our forecasting model must encounter all of these aspects. Specifically, machine learning models are designed to handle them. During the rest, most of the time that I have today, we will go over these aspects and see how they're being, how and if they're being solved by several machine learning models. We will talk about linear regression, linear models such as ARIMA family and Holt-Winters. Linear models are, for those who don't know, models who learn relationship between historical data and the forecasts. We will talk about boosting trees like XGBoost, profit by Facebook, and RNNs like LSTM. Data trends. So the data in this example is the revenue of a specific merchant of e-commerce company. And you can see that the data generally increases over time. There are two ways to handle this. Some of the models, such as linear regression, linear models, and like Holt-Winters and ARIMA, profit by Facebook, they have a built-in component, trend component, that is integrated in the model, so you don't need to do anything. For the rest of the model, it's better to remove the trend in a pre-processing step. Let's go over some techniques for removing the trend in pre-processing. Linear detrending. So here you simply train a linear regression line over time and reduce it from the data. Then you build a forecast model over the detrended series, which is easier, and then you return the trend to your forecast to add the trend to the results. Now, this technique is very simple, and often it works very well. The problem with it is that it doesn't remove local trends if exist in your data. First order derivatives. So here what we do, we generate the differences series. The differences series is a series in which every point in time, the value is the current value minus the previous value. And we generate the differences series. Here you can see how it looks like. You see that it often removes the trend from the data. Now, this is what we do with it. I zoomed in on the last part of the example I showed you. This is the differences series. Now we generate a model for this time series. We generate the forecast. And now, in order to reproduce the forecast, so actually what we did, instead of forecasting the actual value of the data, we forecast the difference from the previous data point. So in order to reconstruct the forecast forward, we need to add the differences, the forecasted differences to the current value. And the next one, and we generate the forecast forward. Now, the advantage is that it's very simple. It may turn your data into stationary, which is a desired property by many linear models. ARIMA, by the way, has this approach integrated in the model. The disadvantage is that errors that you may have in your forecast are cumulative. And let me show you what I mean. So you can see that the forecast of this differences time series is pretty good. But there is quite a big difference in the beginning. The error in the beginning is a little bit big, but what happened is that this error is being cumulative and is dragged over the whole forecast forward. So you can see that the forecast for this time series is not so good. So I've shown you 3 different approaches for removing data in trend in pre-processing. The best practice is to try them all and see what best fits your data. Often, in my experience, global linear detrending works good enough. Oh, I forgot. I only showed you 2 methods. There is a third one, sorry. So, piecewise detrending. In this approach, what you do is you detect change points in trend, and for each part of your data, you trend a different linear regression line and remove it from the data. You see in this example how we trend a different linear regression for each part of the data. This removes the local trend from your data. Now, the disadvantage of this approach is that you need to have an algorithm for change point detection. and this may lead to more errors and overfitting of your data. Another disadvantage is that it might lose the global trend of your data. And let me show you an example. Profit by Facebook uses piecewise detrending, and this is the forecast. The blue line is the forecast it generated for this data. And what happened is that it overfitted to the local trend in the end, and it lost the general trend in the data. So again, as I told you before, please select the approach that best fit your data from the one that I showed you. If you have a long horizon, I wouldn't recommend using piecewise detrending. Okay, seasonality. So many of the business KPIs have seasonality, and it can be daily, weekly, bi-weekly, and so on. To address the seasonality, we first need to detect it. Now, since manual detection is not scalable, we need to use automatic approaches. Existing techniques are based on autocorrelation of the time series, but this is too large a topic to extend on right now. Once we've detected the length of the seasonality, we need to learn its pattern. We need to learn the seasonality itself. So here there are also several approaches. Some of the models have a built-in seasonal component. These are linear models like Holt-Winters, Sarima, and Profit by Facebook. RNNs are also capable of learning the season due to its recurrent nature. For feature-based models like linear regression, boosting trees, and sometimes even RNNs, you can add a seasonal feature. So if I detected that the season is daily, then I would add a feature which is the hour of a day. And if the season is weekly, I will add a feature which is the day of the week. And actually, it works very good. And it's able to capture the season pretty well. For other models which are not feature-based and don't have integral seasonal component, it's best to remove the season in pre-processing. Again, the approach to take is based on the method that you're using and often on trial and error. Now, the problem is that none of the methods that I mentioned can handle changes in the seasonal pattern, which are actually very common when your time series is long. So here are some examples. The first one is taken from a ride-sharing company. You can see that the season stays the same, the season length is the same, the pattern is similar, but the scale of the season increased in the middle. The second example is that the season length stays the same, but the pattern changes after some point in time. And the last example is that the season length itself changes. So here you can see data that wasn't seasonal at all and became seasonal, but there can be transformation from weekly seasonality to daily seasonality and vice versa. The solution to all of this is detecting change points in the time series and learning piecewise seasonal model. For each part of your data, learn a separate model. Now, for large scale, you need the seasonality detection automatic algorithm. Special events, such as holidays, sales events, marketing campaigns, can influence your data by much. It's important to model them because if you will not, it may bias your model, and also you want to give more accurate forecast during the event. But first, we need to identify which of the events actually influence our data in the same way. Often we are given a large number of events, such as all of the holidays, all of the national holidays, and sales events. Okay? Now, some of them has a similar effect on your data. This data here is the revenue of a specific merchant, e-commerce merchant, and you can see that Black Friday influence it pretty similarly every time it appears, but Singles Day, for example, doesn't. It has a different effect. So you need to detect which of the events you want to learn their pattern. If you don't do this, it may lead to overfitting. Identifying the effect in events can be done by measuring the cross-correlation between the events indicator time series and the original time series, or by measuring the variance during the occurrences of the events. After filtering out the non-correlated events, we need to model the effect of the remaining ones. Now, an event can affect the data while occurring, but also on a time range around it. For feature-based models, the effect can be modeled by adding features that indicates that this is an event window, or where we are inside the event window. And actually, this method works pretty good, and it's sometimes able to capture more complex relations between the event and the data, such as the first weekend before Christmas. Okay, so it has much power. Other models learn a separate component for each event. Often, they reduce the trend and the seasonality from the data and learn a separate model over the residuals. For example, Arima with regressors can do it, or a Profit by Facebook. In some cases, learning a constant effect is not enough. Here is an example from a revenue of an online merchant. We can see that the revenue generally increases and that there is an effect during the sales event, but the effect increases on top of the trend of the data. Okay? You can see additional trend to the effect itself. So in these cases, it's better to learn another layer of model on the residuals of the event. And let me show you how it looks like. So here are the results of XGBoost on this data set, and you see that it learned the pattern of the data, but it lacks the trend of the effect. The effect of the event doesn't increase as expected. So what we did, we took the residuals from XGBoost forecast and the actual data during the event windows. We trained a linear regression only on these places and add them to the forecast of XGBoost. And here's the result. And you can see that now the model learned the increase of the effect of the event on the data. Adaptivity. So as we all know, in real life there are surprises. Not everything can be predicted, but once we detect that there is a change in behavior that is not transient change, we need to react as fast and adapt to the new normal as fast as we can. How can it be done? So for feature-based models, what you need to have, it's only an initial condition to make it work, to have contextual features. You need to have the current value, the average of the previous week, and so on. Some models, such as Holt Winters, have hyperparameters which control the rate of learning from historical data versus the learning from the current data. So you can adjust those hyperparameters in order to give more weight to recent data. Some models support sample weights. For this, you can use it to add time-aligned weights, which increase exponentially over time, and then you give much more weight to recent data. It's also useful to retrain your models in much higher rate when you detect that there are a change in the normal behavior of your data. There are cases in which we want to encapsulate domain knowledge. So this can be a belief that specific behavior is the new normal. For example, after a crisis, we may believe that things are back to normal. We need domain knowledge for this. Sometimes the opposite. We believe that a specific certain part in time is abnormal. For example, an ad tech company added a product prior to its competitors, so it has a temporary advantage. But once the competitors add this product as well, this advantage diminishes. So what we can do, and this is supported only by models which support sample weights, we can increase or reduce weights of specific parts in time to get the expected behavior. As opposed to adapt to new normality, when in cases of transient anomalies, we want to avoid learning them. We need to be robust to transient anomalies. Even models which do not tend to overfit, like linear regression, for example, may be biased by extreme anomalies, as you can see in this example. Another reason is when you're using automatic model selection, then if an anomaly appears in your validation set, it may bias your selection towards models which were best during the anomaly, but worse elsewhere. So it's better to detect the anomalies and handle them. To achieve robustness to anomalies, we first need to detect them. Removing outliers is usually not effective, since we may remove parts of our seasonal pattern. Also, sometimes an anomaly is only a local anomaly, it's not global. So removing outliers will not help here. So we need an advanced anomaly detection technique, and this is a topic for a whole new lecture, so I will not extend on this right now. Once we detected anomalies, we have several options. We can add a flag for feature-based models that this is an anomaly. But from my experience, it doesn't work that well, and it's only supported by some of the models. We can remove the anomalies from the data and remain with gaps. And the third option, which works best in my experience, is to replace the anomalies with the predicted values. The quality of the anomaly removal preprocessing depends heavily on the anomaly detection process that you have. So it's important to have a good and reliable one. We've seen some of the main challenges in forecasting time series data accurately and possible solutions for them. Now, each model has its own approach, and it will be a good fit to a different data. It's well known in machine learning that no model fits all. So it's best to try many different models and many hyperparameters, and for each measure, select the one that fits it best. When we are dealing with large scale, we better have an automatic model selection algorithm, often by simply minimizing the MAP error or MAE error. Sometimes, instead of automatically select only one model, it's best to combine several ones and take the advantage, the benefits from each one. So here is an example from e-commerce. In this example, we use two models. One adapts quickly to changes, but it's produced too high forecast in this case. The other one learns well the global trend of the data, but it's not adaptive enough. So the truth lies in the middle. Combining these two into an ensemble of two models produces the best results. Ensembles help us to give more accurate forecast, more stable forecast, and reduce uncertainty by leveraging the results from several models instead of relying only on one. Okay, we've seen what it takes to forecast well one measure. In order to forecast data in large scale, you need an autonomous system. In Anodot, we've built a large-scale forecasting platform which is designed for data analysts, for business analysts, and not for data scientists. Okay? In order to handle large scale and avoid the intervention of data scientists, we needed the system to be autonomous and base it on machine learning. I will show you the architecture of our platform as an example. So the platform has a data collector which continuously collects your data. The user defines what are the measures to forecast, on which timescale and what horizon. Then the system automatically prepares your data, pre-processes it, it removes anomalies, correlates it with external data and additional external events, and prepares it to the forecasting models. Then we train a large number of models from various types, various hyperparameters. The system then selects, it automatically evaluates the performance of the models and selects the ones that best fit each one of the measures. So for each measure, we select its own models which best fit it. Then we use these models to continuously generate forecasts at the desired timescale. Every once in a while, we retrain our models to adjust for latest data that arrive. Now, the infrastructure must support large scale and be autonomous. So to be autonomous, we needed an orchestration engine which runs the pipelines and trained the model. And we distributed the training of models to run in parallel over AWS batch. To conclude, when you forecast, map out the requirements and expectations, understand and prepare for the challenges of your product. Use many machine learning models and select the ones that best fit your data. All of this is critical when needed to forecast accurately in large scale. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Were there any questions before y'all leave? Okay, we have one back there.
Inbal, great presentation. Thank you so much for that. I have one question about situation where we have very little data.
Wait, one moment, I can't hear you.
Can you guys hold for a second, just so we can ask this question?
Okay. Again, great presentation. Thank you so much. My question is about a situation where you don't have enough data. So what do you do in that situation? For example, I'm forecasting for a particular product on a daily basis at a particular store level, but there's just not enough footfall. I don't have enough data. In those situations, how do you generate a good forecasting model for that?
Okay, that's a good question. So you're asking what will I do if I don't have enough historical data, right? So first, as I said before, set expectations. Okay, so in Anodot, we don't expect to forecast well the cost of new services, for example. But we are working now. There are solutions for cold start, and we are just in the process of trying some of them. So what you can do is learn correlations between your between new measures to existing ones. So if it's a total, zero-shot cold start, then you should base your correlation on metadata, if exist. Not always there is metadata, but if you have metadata, then you cluster it according to how the models help predicting the forecast for a different data set with the same properties, okay, or cluster of properties, and then you use it to forecast a new measure that arrived. Often, you don't expect to be any good right in the beginning, but after a while you start to collect some data, and then you can use it to understand, to start extracting some features from the data, like the season. If you have 2 weeks of season, you can sometimes understand daily or weekly seasonality, 3 weeks of data, okay? And you know what is the level of your data, and you start to learn the properties, and then you can use other models to predict it better. I hope it answers your question. And again, there are many works on this, and we are still investigating this issue.
Imbal, we have one more.
Yep.
Right here.
Hi, thank you very much for your nice talk. My name's Christian. How do you detect regime changes? So when you have data that is non-stationary, you removed your trend, you removed your seasonality, but you still encounter regime changes. How do you detect them?
How you detect the change?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, there are many techniques for detecting changes. What we do in online process, I'm telling you, there's a difference between online forecasting and offline forecasting. So in online forecasting, you detect that there is an anomaly. So in the beginning, you think it's an anomaly, right? And after a while, what we do, we learn a spline, a curve of adaptation. So after a while, we start to understand that this is not an anomaly anymore. This is a new change, and this is how we detect it. For historical data, there are different approaches. Like you can run some statistical tests, like F-test, to understand, to find candidates for changes in behavior. And then there are techniques like segmentation of your data and then clustering them and find the separations between the clusters. And the separation is a good candidate for a change point. But there are many other techniques. Hope it helps.
Sorry, Imbal, one more.
Okay.
Hi, thank you. This is a great presentation. I have a question. For the survey data, like our company collect like a daily metrics for the past 3 years, but we only ask the customer to do a survey maybe like March this year once. So based on the survey experience, the survey was based on the experience before it actually happened. So I was wondering, is there some sort of technique that to help us define like, how far back of the data do we need to go, or how do we, maybe there's a specific event that makes the customer really angry of our product when they do the survey. Does that kind of make sense? So, so the survey is based on past experience. Yeah. And we collect data of the past experience. But the problem is we don't know when to cut. Like, should we do use data 6 months prior to the survey, 3 months prior to the survey, or we should maybe identify a specific pattern that kind of link back to the survey result?
So if I understand you right, you are asking if there was a change, right? How much data to collect
So it's more like let's say today a customer take a survey and they're angry about our product, and we have been collecting data, like maybe engineer-related data for the past year. But instead of using the whole years of data to do a prediction on today's survey, is there some sort of technique maybe we could do a cutoff? Like we only use maybe 3 months of data prior to today, or 6 months of data prior to today, to kind of make a more accurate prediction.
So if there is a technique to collect less data than the full year, is this your question? If not, we can take it.
So it's more like it's like the time differences. We only get the predictor is like a point of data. So today the customer says, "I hate your product," but we're collecting data for the past year. So like using the data a year ago, that's to predict today's the customer's reaction. We're not sure if that's a proper way to do it. Does that kind of make sense? So it's not like a one-to-one relationship. It's you as a customer, how do you feel about product today? But what really happened is she might have a bad experience 3 months ago, 4 months ago, or maybe something further back. But we don't know how to cut off our data to make that proper prediction.
Okay, I'm not sure I understand your question well, but so we can take it offline to make sure it's understand it correctly. But if you adapt to latest historical data, then the rest is starting to get less and less important. What you want from the far history is mainly things that are, for example, if you have annual events or things like this, then you need to have far history to learn several patterns of it. But the most data you get from the latest history. So, but I'm not sure I answered your question, so we can keep talking about it if you wish.
So yeah, it's kind of like the same concept. It's just we need to know, like we might collect data 3 years ago. We're not sure if that data point is even good to predict how customers feel today. So it's kind of like very similar to what you're saying. Like the closer data is definitely more important. But with the problem is how far back we need to go until the data is not important.
So if you're using autoregressive techniques, then it increases exponentially. So I mean, you can measure how much weight you gave to each point in time in the historical data, and see if something remains. But you don't want to lose all of your historical data, because you may lose things that are important that you haven't seen lately. I don't think there is a point in time that you can, you put a point and say, this is where it's not important anymore, and this is where it is important. Just use whatever you have. I mean, whatever you have may help you.
Oh, I see. So you're saying that autoregress, so you kind of take today as 0, and then you do a -1, -2, -3, kind of lag back, and use today's day as as the reference point instead of using the regular way we view data. Is that what you're suggesting? Like,
Let's take it offline because I'm not sure I understand you well. Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah.